here's your host, Justin Swallows.
Good Saturday morning to you, sports fans, and welcome on into the Splash. We know this is kind of a hangover weekend for a lot of sports fans, as it's our first official weekend without any football. We will talk some football today on the shows. We talk about college football's National Signing Day. It was another successful one over at Austin Peay State University, as Coach Will Healy and the gang brought in another top 5 class. We'll get to that in just a moment. We'll talk a lot of college basketball on today's show as well. The Governors of Austin Peay currently sit third place in the Ohio Valley Conference, still within striking distance of the second place spot and that double bye in the Ohio Valley Conference tournament. The Govs are on the road this afternoon. It's not a night game. It's a Saturday afternoon game at Eastern Illinois. It'll tip off right around 3 o'clock on the OVC Digital Network. The women are playing at 1 against the Panthers of EIU, and we're going to talk about that a little later on. Colton Pouncey is going to join us. He's the Austin Peay Hoops beat writer for the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle. He'll be part of our show, as will Grant Ramey from GoVols247.com as we talk a little UT basketball. The Vols are riding high right now, and they are the media darlings of college hoops, it seems. Everybody's talking about Tennessee basketball and Coach Rick Barnes and the job he's done there, and the potential that Tennessee team might have down the stretch this season as they head towards postseason play. We'll talk about that a little later on. But as promised, we are going to talk football to begin today's show. Again, the Governors of Austin Peay had another phenomenal recruiting class. Coach Will Healy and company raked in the number 3 class nationally in the football championship subdivision and the number 1 class for the 3rd straight year in the Ohio Valley Conference. And joining us to talk about it this morning as we kick off our show, it's the radio voice of the Austin Peay football Govs, Brian Reeves. Brian, how are you, man?
Good morning from the land of Lincoln. Justin, how are you?
Good to be with you, and we appreciate you joining us. We love having you on because not only are you a dear friend of the show, but you're a real Austin Peay football program insider. And as we celebrate another top 5 nationally ranked recruiting class for the Govs, I want to go directly into something Coach Healy talks about, it seems like, all the time, and that's tools made available to get the job done. What resources, Brian, have you seen extended to this Austin Peay football program since Ryan Ivey took over as athletics director that have really helped that program land now 3 straight number 1 OVC classes?
Well, I think you just look at the position the program has been put in. It's no longer an afterthought. It's no longer a precursor to get the basketball season. You've seen an emphasis placed on football, and football being a priority at Austin Peay State University. We knew what Forterra Stadium would become, but when you add in that weight room, when you add in that locker room that was done 100% first class, when you add in the training facilities, you look at the way this team travels. Even the simple thing as the partnership with Briggs Clothier, where you put those nice red jackets and they get off the bus and walk into the stadium during the Gov Walk in those coat and ties. There's just more of an emphasis and an importance. The presentation always makes the product seem better. And I think Austin Peay has done a better job of presenting that, and that's been echoed when you see, as you said, 3 consecutive top 5 recruiting classes coming to Austin Peay State University. That echoing and showing, and the results showing in the quality of young men, the quality of student athletes that'll wear red and white for Austin Peay.
You know, when it comes to recruiting for Austin Peay football, I just can't help but wonder, Brian, when do the selling points have to change on the recruiting trail? The last 2 years, they could sell changing the culture, plus they could sell early and extended playing time. That's not always going to be the case. As a matter of fact, it might not be this year. The Govs signed a quarterback out of Alabama that more than likely is going to have to redshirt behind 3 already established players at that position. How much tougher is it, you think, to sell Austin Peay football with having that immediate impact to offer?
Well, you mentioned LaDerrick Bell, the young man from Anniston, Alabama, that'll have to set. I'm not sure that the message will have to change. I'm just what the end goal will have to change. You know, Will Healy has often said when he went out and when he first met his team last year, you know, what's our goal? And Kyrie Tiny Moore, the young man, famously said, hey, to win a national championship. And Will said, hey, I appreciate that, but let's make our first goal to win a game, and then we'll work on national championship. Well, now you don't have to worry about winning a game. Now your next goal is let's win the Ohio Valley Conference. Let's defeat the beast that is Jacksonville State that runs this league. And then once we get to that point, hey, then let's go get the playoffs. Let's go make that run. I'm not sure the message has to change. And you're right. And Will pointed it out, and we've talked several times, the battles he fought in recruiting this time were much different than he fought before, because he wasn't fighting for, hey, I need you, you can play right away. He fought battles like, hey, I can use you. You may have to sit a year, but then we're going to get 3 or 4 years out of you, and you're going to play at a championship level. So I'm not sure the message changed. I'm sure that the selling point to the young man, as you said, will have to change because, hey, you're going to take a year. You're going to hit our weight room. You're going to get in our fitness program. We're going to get your academics right, and then we'll focus on the field.
Yeah, that's definitely a change in philosophy, I guess, from what we have been able to see at Austin Peay in the past, but that's a good thing. I don't think there's any doubt, and there are lots of good things coming out of Austin Peay football right now. We're talking about the Govs' top 5 recruiting class with the radio voice of Austin Peay football, Brian Reeves, kind enough to join us this morning. And Brian, let's start to unwrap this class a little bit. All told, including junior college and high major transfers, Austin Peay signed 22 newcomers. At least they have thus far. There may be a couple more transfers trickling in down the road. You just never know when that stops. But which position group do you think benefited the most with this class? I know they signed a lot of defensive backs. I think they picked up some sizable offensive linemen that can help soon. And I think some potential contributors on the defensive line were garnered as well. Which position groups in specific do you think will be bolstered the greatest by this crop of newcomers?
Well, the defensive side of the football got the emphasis. There's no doubt about when you look at this class. And as you said, 22 signings, 18 pure freshmen. And to me, that tells me, to your earlier question, 18 pure freshmen that can come in. And out of those 18, the couple that I look at that can play instantly is this linebacking group that came in on Thursday. Brandon Lopes, a young man out of Stockbridge, Georgia. Parker Dennis, a young man from Montgomery, Alabama. Both go 6'1", both in that 215 to 220 range. They are, for lack of a better word, or for Governor fans to get that idea, they're Gunnar Shalato prototype. Both, like I said, 6'1", 215, 220, both very athletic men that can cover and play the inside linebacker in the run positioning. They can go out to the outside and cover tight ends or slot in limited space. I think the linebacker group got just stronger and stronger. And as you said, when you look at the defensive side of the football, you bring in Darius Shipp, a big defensive tackle that'll play nose, 6'3", 300 pounds. You know we've got our transfer from Oregon that's finally going to become eligible this season, but we got 1 year out of him. That allows Shipp to redshirt and develop his body and be ready. And as you said, I don't think this class is done. Just for Governor fans that are excited about the group that came in, I'm not sure it's completely done. I'm sure there's a couple more names, preferred walk-ons as well, that'll slowly start to trickle in. But I think it's the defensive side of the football that's going to see the biggest boost from this group. What
about individuals, Brian? Knowing you, I'm sure you got a couple of favorites picked out from this class already. Who are the guys that really got you excited, the ones coming in that you feel can make the biggest impact right away?
Well, the first name that Governor fans are going to know and remember, and I think will leave his mark at Austin Peay, is a young man by the name of Darius Knowles. He's a 6'2" wide receiver from Fayette, Alabama. And the reason he gets me excited is I got sold in recruiting him because Will Healy said, and this is a direct quote, he's the best prepared wide receiver I've ever recruited. Now, what does that tell you? I mean, if you look at the lineage of receivers that came through Chattanooga and that have slowly started to come through Austin Peay, and we've seen their skills, to put that tag on Knowles just tells you what a special individual this can be. So, he's the guy that played for the Alabama Class 4A championship, caught 11 passes for 108 yards in that contest, over 1,700 yards in his senior season, a big 6'2" receiver that can get separation from the line. So Knowles is a guy that gets me excited on the offensive side. On the defensive side, the biggest name that I really look at that I can't wait to come see is Kwame Sutton, a young man from Blacksburg, South Carolina, 6'1", 233 pounds. When you look at Kwame's tape and you look at what he can do, he reminds you a lot of Jason Williams. He reminds you a lot of the development where Williams was coming to us from Alabama and where he is now, which, a candidate for OVC Defensive Player of the Year and probably the preseason Defensive Player of the Year heading into next season, in my opinion. Sutton's a young man that can get after the quarterback, is great in run pursuit. So Sutton on the defensive side and Knowles on the offensive side lets me know that this Governor program is headed in the right direction.
There's no doubt it's headed in the right direction. The Govs are coming off their third straight top 5 nationally ranked recruiting class, and we are recapping it this morning with the radio voice of Austin Peay football, Brian Reeves. And Brian, football recruiting was very different this year with the new early signing period in December And it seems like Coach Healy and company so far really like that addition. How specifically did you see that early signing option really benefiting Austin Peay? And do you see that always helping smaller schools, or do you think that the Power 5 schools at some point will adjust over time?
Well, I think they'll adjust, but I think that it helps the FCS and the Austin Peay level schools twofold. Number one, that December signing class, the Governor's brought in a dozen pure freshmen at that, brought in 10 pure freshmen, 2 transfers at that point. But those guys are locked in. And so often we hit that February date, and we talked about it the other night with Will and with the coaching staff at the recruiting, at the ceremony. There's some cherry picking that goes on. There's some nervous stomachs and nervous moments a couple of days before, because when those big boys miss on a guy, they come and try to cherry pick one of your guys, and you lose a couple on signing day or the day before. Well, now you've got a better group locked in December, and you know you've got them. So I think there's a bigger emphasis for FCS level schools, the OVCs, the AACs, around that area. They're going to go in December and push December hard. They want to get those guys locked in and signed up, knowing that they're there, knowing exactly what their needs are and what they can do, and bring them into their program and have them locked up. So that way you're not as nervous going in to that February signing day. The second fold of that is once you get that initial December class in, when you start looking at your February date, you almost can pick your position. If you brought in that group like the Governors did of 12, and you keep looking, saying, we're still kind of deficient at the offensive line spot. Well, then you're like Austin Peay. You go get you a couple more offensive linemen for that March day or that February date, and you bring them in. Still missing a couple of defensive ends. You change the focus of your recruiting after that initial December class before February to really focus on your positions of need and really focus on those players that can help your program the most.
Focus, I think, is a good word for what Austin Peay football did this past recruiting season. They honed in on 24 players, we were told, and got 22 of the 24. The 2 they didn't get ended up going to Power 5 conferences, or I guess the Power 6. One of them went to Central Florida. One of them went to the American Athletic Conference, but the other went to Arkansas. So if you're missing, if the guys you miss end up going to big-time FBS programs like that, I think that says something about the philosophy and the way things are being done in terms of recruiting. We're talking about Austin Peay football's National Signing Day and the success they've had on the recruiting trail with Brian Reeves, the radio voice of Govs football. And Brian, I wanted to ask, to what extent do you think maybe this year's Austin Peay recruiting class is even more impressive than the last 2? To me, this one came amidst some off-season turmoil as Coach Healy, we were told, interviewed for another job, and 3 assistants were pulled away by better opportunities. Does it impress you any more that they were able to land another top 5 class with some extra drama unfolding behind the scenes?
Well, I think once Will got reaffirmed that he was coming back to Austin Peay, when the athletic department made the commitment to Will with the contract, I think that settled it down. A byproduct of success on any level, whether it be here at Austin Peay, whether it be at the University of Tennessee or Vanderbilt, or whether it be, at the Titans, you're going to see coaches move. I mean, you look at the staff at the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots, who just played the Super Bowl on Sunday. Within the week, two major candidates off the New England staff, 1 candidate off the Philadelphia staff have left. So when you have success, your coaches are going to be the byproduct or the beneficiaries of that, and they're going to move to other jobs. That's what you saw here. You saw Coach Marcus West leave, head to Minnesota to coach defensive ends for Coach Fleck. You saw Max Thurman, who was the linebacker coach and special team coordinator, leave. He's now the defensive coordinator at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. And you saw the running backs coach head down to his alma mater and head back to Troy. So you're going to have byproducts of that kind of success. And Coach Will Healy said it perfectly. If I'm not having my coaches poached, I don't have good enough coaches. So it's going to be one of those things that it's a growing pain. It's a product of success. But you're right. To keep this class together and give Will credit. Sutton, a young man that I told you I was excited about from South Carolina on the defensive end, had a great relationship with Marcus West. When Coach West had the decision, when it came to finalization that he was headed to Minnesota, Will Healy got on the phone with Sutton and said, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. Marcus is leaving. If you still want to come here, I still want you. I still want you to be a Governor. And that was 3 days before the signing day. Okay, that was Monday before the Wednesday signing day. So he gave Sutton every opportunity. He said, I don't want to sell you a lie. I'm not going to tell you something different. I don't know who your coach is going to be right now, but I want you to have the opportunity to be the best you can be. I still think that's at Austin Peay. That speaks to me to the character of Will Healy and to what he's trying to build with this program, to let those individuals know what the coaching situation is, and that shows you exactly what it benefits from. Sutton decided to still come with, unbeknownst to him, who his defensive line coach is going to be.
Brian, how well do you think Coach Healy's going to fare in filling these 3 coaching vacancies that now exist? You said it. He needs a defensive line coach. He needs a running backs coach. He needs a special teams coordinator and a linebackers coach. Do you have any inclination at all about where he might look to fill those spots? Should we expect, you think he'll interview guys mostly with previous ties to him, or will he bring in outsiders just based on their level of success?
I hope I'm not talking out of school, but I'm going to tell a story that Will told me. When it got out there finally, and I think you and I talked on Tuesday, but I think it was Monday evening, Tuesday morning, that Marcus West was leaving. Will told me he fielded 7 calls. The first call he got that morning was from Dabo Sweeney at Clemson, giving him a name for a defensive line coach.
Wow.
The second call he got was from the defensive staff at Georgia Tech, giving him a name. The next 4 calls were all SEC schools trying to get their guys, whether it be an assistant or a grad assistant or somebody, giving him names. So the interest, if we were replacing a defensive coordinator 4 or 5 years ago, those phone calls don't come to Austin Peay State University. That shows you the level of respect this program is getting because of a West going to Minnesota, because of coaches going to others, because of previous coaches being in the NFL and having success. I don't think this will be a quick process. I know for a fact that they have pushed back spring practice 1 full week to give Will and his staff a chance to go do the interviews, to get the staff full and whole before they hit spring practice. You're going to be natural to get with guys you already have ties with, but I don't think he's going to limit that. I think he's going to look for the absolute best person and absolute best fit for the young men that are here, the young men that are coming here, and to keep this program moving to a spot where we're competing in the FCS playoff for that national ring.
Having success, we've talked about some of the byproducts, and having those coaches poached is one of them. Another downfall, I guess, of success is the expectation level changes, and folks just expect more and more out of you. Coach Healy has turned this Austin Peay program around in short order, and we as fans, Brian, we've gone from I hope we can win 3 or 4 games to now it's OVC championship or bust. How fair do you think that is? With all of the hype after these recruiting classes and everything that's been talked about, with all the hype surrounding the program right now, what should we as fans, you think, be happy with in 2018?
A repeat performance. I think, and Will said it best, you know, you start the season ranked in the 230s, 240s, 250, depending on which category you're looking at, and you end the season, basically, FCS told you were 25 or 26 in the nation, missing out on the playoffs. Because you started so low, it was hard to overcome that obstacle. This year, you're going to go in my opinion, you're probably top 30, top 40 preseason, and you can make that move a little higher. You may even be higher than that, but I think conservatively you're in the 30s or 40s moving forward. I think realistic expectations are to compete again for the Ohio Valley Conference Championship and make your way into the FCS playoffs. At that point, it's a success. Now, are you going to sneak up on anybody this year? Absolutely not. Everyone knows what's coming. Everyone knows the product. Those folks that overlooked the same old Austin Peay last year when they took to the gridiron are not going to have those expectations coming in. So it's going to be a different focus from every team we play this year. The quality of competition outside is going to be better, of course, with Presbyterian and, of course, opening with the University of Georgia. But Healy says it himself. It's playoffs or bust for him. So I think the fans should echo this coaching staff, this program. It's time to make a run in the FCS playoffs. Getting in this year is the expectation, and with this class and with another recruiting class coming in the last couple of years, as you move forward, they want to leave with a ring on their finger.
Well, and if they get in, I think they'll have to have a ring on their finger, or at least it appears so. The only way the OVC, at least this past year, got a team into those playoffs was with a championship, and Coach Healy and company will be looking to do just that in 2018. We'll all be following along. Brian Reeves is our guest this morning as we talk a little Govs football following college football's National Signing Day. Brian's the radio voice of Austin Peay on the gridiron. And, Brian, I'll end with a question about scheduling. You mentioned Coach Healy gave us the gist of it earlier this week at the Signing Day celebration. The Govs open up at Georgia. Then they'll be at home against Presbyterian. And then they'll be on the road at Morehead State before getting into conference play. I wanted to get your thoughts on some comments he made, though. He focused on that Georgia game in week 1, and he did it to highlight the importance of playing a big-name program and getting some national exposure. I really like this, and I wanted to point back to it as we talked this morning. What did you think about his comments on how playing a Cincinnati or a Miami of Ohio does very little good in terms of helping the program create a buzz? And he mentioned that he wants to play these high-profile top 10 type teams.
You look at the exposure this program got. Let's just go back a few years. Opening at Tennessee, playing a Vanderbilt. This year, opening at a Georgia. And he says it. When we hit media days or when we really hit late July and August and start talking college football, they're going to flash Georgia's schedule. Georgia's probably going to be the number 2, number 3 team in the nation, if not number 1 in some polls. They'll show their schedule. And the top line of that schedule, they're going to open with Austin Peay. You can't pay for that kind of exposure. When you go play at Miami of Ohio or a Cincinnati, those are quality opponents, and we're not knocking Coach Fickell at Cincinnati, and we got the exposure because we got to open on a Thursday night on television. But that doesn't get the national buzz that playing a Georgia, that playing a Tennessee, that in a couple of years possibly playing at an Ole Miss or somewhere else will get this program. So I can appreciate that. If you're going to be for a 13-year-old boy to borrow an old Ric Flair line, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And to show your product, you've got to get out against the man. And at this point, it's the University of Georgia. We open up the first Saturday in September.
Absolutely, and everybody's fired up about it. I think it's great. It's great exposure for Austin Peay, and folks around the country are starting to take notice of what's going on here in Clarksville. And, Brian, you are one of the greatest ambassadors for it, man. We appreciate you taking some time out to talk Doves football with us this morning, man.
Man, I'm glad to do it. Headed on up to Charleston, Illinois. I'll be on the call this afternoon for Austin Peay basketball. I know you got Colton on later. So, big day for the women. They've got to get a win this afternoon because the next 4 opponents after today, they've already lost to in all 4 contests previously this season. Coach Midlick and the women want to make a run. They got to get it started today. And let's see how Coach Figger and the men bounce back after that disappointing loss at Murray State.
Yeah, it's a big game for both teams.
Later.
Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. It's a day to make some hay, quite honestly, for the Governors up here in the land of Lincoln.
Absolutely. Good luck to you, Brian. We know you'll do a great job, my man. Thanks.
Hey, Justin, anytime. You and John have fun this morning in Splash.
We'll do it. Brian Reeves is the radio voice of Austin Peay football, and he'll be on the call for basketball. I didn't know that. He's on the call for basketball this afternoon as well as the Lady Govs take on the Panthers at 1, and the Governors will play at 3 o'clock against EIU as well. It's a big game for both of those squads because they're going to be coming back home. They'll play 3 of their final 4 games at home after this game this afternoon at EIU. So to get that extra win on the road before you come home for 3 of your last 4, I think is absolutely paramount. And we'll talk more Governors basketball later on in the show as Colton Pouncey is set to join us. He's the Austin Peay Hoops beat writer for the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle. We'll chat about that later. But next, we're going to go to the Southeastern Conference to talk hoop. We'll talk about the Tennessee Volunteers on the hardwood as Grant Ramey joins us from GoVols247.com. The Vols are on the road at Alabama this afternoon at 5 o'clock. We'll have the action here on the Big 1400, and we'll have Grant Ramey to talk about it right after this.
Ever lost or misplaced your debit card? Now, before that happens, download the Card Valet mobile app. With it, you can turn your F&M debit card on and off, establish when, where, and how it is used, and much more. And best of all, it's free from F&M Bank. Member FDIC.
When's the last time you ate somewhere that uses real ingredients and makes everything from scratch? If it's been too long, you should head over to the Lunchbox at 2124 Woodlawn Road. They're serving daily barbecue plates featuring everything from smoked chicken to baby back ribs. The Lunchbox menu also features the best hamburgers and all-beef hot dogs around, served on freshly baked homemade buns. Save room for dessert because they've got hand-dipped ice cream and milkshakes too at the Lunchbox, just off from Highway 79 at 2124 Woodlawn Road.
Treat your pets to a vacation of their own at the Animal Guest House. Whether you're looking for doggy daycare service or long-term boarding, Animal Guest House will love your most loyal companions as much as you do. They have almost 2 acres of fenced-in roaming space, offer grooming services, and proudly have absolutely 0 breed restrictions. Animal Guest House is located in Woodlawn at 1970 Chester Harris Road. Give them a call at 931-920-2719 or check them out online at animalguesthouse.com. Animalguesthouse.com.
Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. It's your car, it's your voice. Jackson's Body Shop, the best choice. Dents, dings, major body repair. A pre-loaner car, 'cause we really care. Jackson's
Looking to catch the big game with a group of friends? Do it O'Neill style. Want to see a great live band rock the stage? Do it O'Neill style. Hungry for a great meal or just thirsty for an icy cold draft beer? Get them O'Neill style at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, a genuinely great American sports bar. They've got wall-to-wall TVs, huge selections behind the bar, and a menu that obliterates the average pub fare. Clarksville's best times take place at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, located at 1979 Madison Street in Midtown.
WVWB, 1400 AM, Clarksville, Tennessee.
It's a big day on the hardwood for the University of Tennessee Volunteers. They're coming off a huge road win at Kentucky, and they're at Alabama this afternoon at 5 o'clock local time. We'll have all the action right here on WVWB. We'll probably not be able to carry the pregame stuff. We've got high school basketball, but we should have the tip-off at 5 for you as the Vols look for a big SEC road win. And on to talk with us about it, the man that covers the Vols, I think, as well as anybody when it comes to UT hoops especially. Grant Ramey is with us from GoVols247.com. Grant, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We are awesome, and we'll dive right in. A lot of Tennessee basketball fans are pretty fired up, and I think rightly so after the win Tuesday night over Kentucky. But some of us that dig a little deeper might be concerned. The Vols sank just over 40% of their shots in that road win over the Wildcats, and they were just 5 of 21 from three-point land. Why shouldn't we, as fans, worry about this team's sometimes offensive inconsistency?
Because they're so kind of defensive-minded. They want to be successful on the defensive end first. And when you're focused like they are on that end of the floor, you can kind of have off nights offensively and still get by like they did Tuesday night at Rupp Arena. I think they've held 9 of their last 10 opponents under 65 points. During this 6-game win streak they're on right now, I think they're giving up an average of 58.5 points a game. So when you're that good defensively, when you're playing that well on that end of the floor, you can afford to have a poor night shooting or not get a lot of points from one of your star players and kind of survive and advance, which is what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Defensively, it's pretty easy for us to feel good about UT's chances moving forward. In their last 8 games, specifically, the Vols have given up right at 60 points per outing, and they held Kentucky to only 8 made baskets in the first half on Tuesday night. To me, that's pretty impressive. Who deserves, you think, Grant, the lion's share of credit for this team's defensive success? Is it just superior athleticism? Is it their hard-nosed, workman-like mentality, or is it Rick Barnes and the game plan he's able to put together week to week that makes that defense, I think, one of the best in the country?
It's a little bit of a mix of everything. They have so much more depth and athleticism down the roster this year than they've had either of the last 2 years. So they can really kind of play a different brand of defense where your guards are picking up 94 feet and kind of playing full court. And they have so many bodies that they really just tell them to play as hard as they can for 2 or 3 minutes, defend as hard as they can, and then they'll get somebody in there to substitute. They'll get a breath, and then they'll go back and kind of do it all over again. It's almost like hockey shifts at times. They're trying to roll people in and out so much. So I think when you have that many bodies and you can do that much, you can give that much effort when you're on the floor, it changes things. And Rick Barnes has said multiple times this season that the last 2 years they just haven't been able to play that kind of defense because they didn't have the bodies and they didn't have the athleticism. And he's been right that they've been able to use that to their advantage to this point.
Yeah, again, I think they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. We're talking Tennessee basketball this morning in the Saturday Sports Splash with Grant Ramey of GoVols247.com. And Grant, offensively, as we go back to that side of the ball, especially in terms of point production, it's like you never know who the star is going to be for this Tennessee team. Admiral Schofield throughout the month of January was pretty much Mr. Reliable. Then he comes out on Tuesday night. He goes 0 for 6 from beyond the three-point arc, sinking just 6 of 16 shots overall. To what extent would you agree that sometimes Admiral's a little too in love with the three-point shot and not interested enough in driving the ball towards the bucket?
Yeah, we've actually kind of started joking covering the games that it doesn't really start. It's not officially a game until Admiral shoots a three because it's usually on one of the first 2 possessions, it seems like. But, yeah, that's a shot. I mean, he's proven to be one of the better three-point shooters. I mean, when you look at the totals through the season, but he is a guy that really hunts for those shots from deep and And if he's not shooting from behind the line, sometimes it seems like he takes a dribble a couple steps in and shoots from, 18 feet, whatever that is right there. It's a really long 2-point shot. But I think more often he could get to the lane. I mean, he's such a mismatch when he's on the wing because he's such a big body that he could get a guard to the paint and play on 2 feet and decide what to do from there, whether that's pass back out to the perimeter, find somebody in the post, or just go up and find a way to score the ball himself. But as long as he's producing and shooting the way he is, he's going to have some off nights, but more often than not, he's one of their more reliable three-point shooters.
Speaking of off nights, sophomore big man Grant Williams had one on Tuesday. He's supposed to be the face of Tennessee basketball, but he looked less like a star on Tuesday night. He attempted only 3 shots and made only 1 in the Kentucky game, and I'll contend that it was maybe the level of physicality that was allowed that really bothered him. What gives you, Grant, confidence in the sometimes special sophomore that even when things get a little rough around the rim, he's still going to be capable of delivering?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Kentucky is it's a pretty tough matchup for him because what P.J. Washington can do in the post defending him and what Jared Vanderbilt can do in the post defending him, Kentucky didn't have him the first time around when they played Tennessee. That's a really bad matchup for Grant Williams. But even if he does, I think he was 1 for 3 from the floor in that game, he does find a way to get to the line and end up the night with, I think, 10 points. And I don't know how many rebounds he had, but he found ways to get to the free throw line and still be effective despite them really taking it away. And I guess it speaks to the depth of this team that they can still find different people to score the ball when Grant Williams does have an off night like that. But I think what you have to have confidence in is night in and night out, his numbers seem to be there. He has a lot more, obviously, nights where he's on than when he's off.
Grant, what about the Tennessee backcourt? The minutes have seemingly been shifted amongst various options back there all season long. James Daniel played a lot early. Now he seems to be getting a little less time. Darrington isn't seeing the floor very much at all these days. On the flip side, Lamonte Turner and Jordan Bowden are now apparently earning more and more minutes. At what point do you suspect Coach Barnes is going to be more settled on who the top guards on that team are?
It's a good question. Until they settle themselves or sort themselves out, they'll continue to just kind of play the hot hand. Right now, it's been Lamonte Turner. Recently, James Daniels had a good couple games before. I think he was scoreless at Kentucky, and Jordan Bones had some better nights over the last month than he did leading into this kind of stretch where they've won 9 out of 10. Chris Darrington's a guy who just hasn't earned it in practice. He's not somebody that they feel like they can trust to put on the floor for a lot of minutes. So until he really changes something in that area, it's not going to change for him. He'll stay on the bench. But I do think they feel good about, even if they don't really know night in and night out who's going to do what at guard, they feel like somebody's going to step up and do something. And they do feel like they have 3 really good options in James Daniel, Jordan Bone, and Lamonte Turner.
Grant Ramey is our guest this morning from GoVols247.com as we talk Tennessee basketball here in the Saturday Sports Splash. The Vols will be on the road against Alabama this afternoon. Tip-off at 5 o'clock. We'll have all that action right here on the Big 1400. And, Grant, I never thought Nick Saban's words would ever really resonate with me, but I keep thinking about his rat poison comments as the national media starts to just fall in love with Tennessee basketball. We have pundits now saying that Tennessee looks like a team that could compete for one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament. How concerned are you about this young team believing the national hype and developing a sense of entitlement?
I don't really seem that worried about it at all. I don't think anybody within the program is that worried about it. They've been ranked for 2.5 months now. They've been, kind of popping up in the bracketology stuff from really early on in the season. I mean, they started out maybe a 6 or 7 seed in that stuff, and now they've kind of worked their way into almost a number 2 seed, number 3 seed across the board. So they've handled success to this point because they had early success in the season. There's never really been a drop-off. They had that 0-2 start to SEC play where it looks like there might be some problems, and since then they've won 9 out of 10 and won their last 6, and it just seems like a really loose team. They have obviously really good chemistry. It's a pretty big talking point with this team, how well they work together. They root for each other, how much fun they have on and off the floor. It seems like a team that's really only worried about itself. And And when you look at the schedule, I mean, the toughest stuff really in terms of the regular season's behind them. Tonight at Alabama, sold out Coleman Coliseum. That'll probably be one of their tougher tests remaining on the schedule. They get Florida at home later in the year. They go to Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Georgia, teams like that. So really the toughest stuff is behind them. It's just about how many games they can win over this final 7-game stretch and kind of where they set themselves up for seeding in the SEC tournament and go from there.
Well, I want to ask you about that 7-game stretch and how you think the Vols will fare as they close out the regular season. But first, let's continue to talk about the media and how they kind of fall in love, because they seem to have done so finally with the Southeastern Conference overall. As a league, the SEC has been lampooned for years as a football-first endeavor, but now everybody all of a sudden loves it. I've seen predictions of anywhere from 7 to 9 league teams making the NCAA tournament. How many, Grant, do you predict will eventually end up in the field of 68, and how much better do you believe the league really is right now than what we've seen regularly over the last 3 to 5 years?
Right now, it feels like it's going to be an 8-team league, eight-bid league come Selection Sunday. It's as good as it's been over, I guess, the last decade or something like that. Just when you look at the depth, I mean, usually teams like Florida and Kentucky are kind of the class of the league and quite a bit better than those middle-of-the-road teams. When you look at it this year, the way Kentucky struggled, the way Florida struggled, the way there's just a lot of really solid, really tough teams kind of in the middle of the standings, it's as deep as it's been in a while, and that kind of leads the league to kind of cannibalize itself over this, you know, through the SEC tournament in the Selection Sunday. But it still feels like, despite that, there's going to be maybe 7, 8 teams that get in, and I think the record for SEC teams in the tournament is 6. So if they get in 8, it would be huge for the league. And I think you've seen all these teams schedule a little bit better in the non-league, and I think they've made commitments to basketball with a lot better coaching hires over the last few years, and they've ended up recruiting better, and kind of this is all kind of the perfect storm result.
I think 8 teams from the SEC in the NCAA tournament seems like a real possibility right now, I think, and folks are excited about it. And here, Grant, I'll be honest with you, we've been mulling around the potential of Tennessee being a national title contender. National media pundits seem to think so. I just don't see that with their inconsistencies on offense. And I don't know, I guess as a longtime Vol fan, I'm kind of hesitant to get my hopes up. Make the case for us either way. Can these Vols, you think, compete for a national championship, or is it just that they're so much better than what we've seen recently that maybe we're all overreacting a little bit?
I mean, I don't think it's a crazy overreaction because they've proven. I mean, they beat Purdue in November. They played really well against Villanova the next day in the first half. They should have beat North Carolina at home. They swept Kentucky. I mean, they've played really good basketball against really good teams. But I mean, when you get to the NCAA tournament, everything's about matchups. Where they end up getting seeded, who they end up getting seeded against, who else is in their regional, where they sent to play the first round and the second round, how far away from home are they? I mean, there's sites in Nashville and Charlotte, Pittsburgh. There's some stuff that's relatively close to Knoxville. Just depends on where they go and who they have to play. What works in their favor is they've played one of the toughest schedules in the country. They're going to be tested by the time they get there, and they're a team that's deep and athletic. That plays, you know, a really annoying brand of defense, and somebody that's going to be hard to prepare for on a short turnaround if they get out of the first round. So I think it all factors into that. Like you're saying, they are inconsistent on offense. That could lead to an early exit against an upset-minded higher seed, but it just depends on who you get and how they're playing at the time. There's still a lot of basketball to be played between now and then, but they are a team that if they're still playing like this, they could stick around the tournament for a while.
We're talking UT Hoops this morning here in the Saturday Sports Splash with Grant Ramey of GoVols247.com. And Grant, I always like to finish up these segments, if it's possible, with some predictions. And we'll start today at Alabama. How will the Vols fare, you think, in front of a sold-out road crowd there? And secondly, as we talk about where Tennessee's going to get seated and how they'll wind up getting slotted into the postseason, how do you see this stretch of 7 remaining regular season games going for UT. What would you call the best and worst case finishes for this squad?
Tonight's kind of hard to predict because Alabama's kind of all over the place. They've got some really good wins. They've got some kind of really head-scratching losses. It is sold out. It's going to be a tough atmosphere to play in. I didn't give Tennessee much of a chance to win in Rupp the other night, to be honest, especially the way the game was playing out in the closing minutes. I think Tennessee can win if they come out and take care of business. I think Alabama can come out and take care of their own business and handle Tennessee if they play the right way. I think tonight is the toughest game they have left in terms of atmosphere and opponent. They have 3 home games left against Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. They need to win all 3 of those because they can win all 3 of those. And they have 3 road games left with Georgia, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, and they need to win probably 2 of those 3. So if you're looking at a 6-1 after tonight is a realistic possibility, they can do that because the fortunate thing for them is they've played themselves into a position where they can drop a couple games, and it's not going to be the end of the world. They've taken care of business to this point where they've kind of budgeted in a couple losses if they need them. And they're still looking at a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament, which is really the biggest goal for them right now.
Well, in a top 2 seed, I guess a top 4 seed would get them straight into Friday, right? Straight into the quarterfinals. So that would be huge.
That's I mean, you can't really overstate how big of an advantage it is for those 4 teams to skip those first 2 days, and then you're straight into the quarterfinals. And if you can win that game, you're into the semifinals the next day.
Absolutely. That's a realistic possibility, Vol fans. There's plenty to be excited about, no doubt. And, Grant, you do an excellent job covering the team. We really appreciate you being a friend of our show and coming on to chat with us from time to time.
Hey, thanks for having me anytime.
Grant Ramey from GoVols247.com. If you don't follow him on social media, you're missing out in a big, big way. He does a great job live tweeting a lot of the games and taking photos and sending updates from practice and that kind of thing. He really does a good job covering UT hoops. Grant Ramey from GoVols247.com is a dear friend of the Saturday Sports Splash. It's always good to have him on, and we're excited about the potential for what Tennessee basketball could do down the stretch. Just as a longtime UT hoops fan, honestly, if I'm just coming clean with you, I'm just a little concerned. I'm afraid to get my hopes up on this team. You know, it's been 2014 was the last time the Vols went to the NCAA tournament. They went to the Sweet 16 that year under Conzo Martin. It's been a while since Tennessee basketball has had any real postseason success, and I'm just cautiously optimistic, I think, is the best way to describe your humble host today when it comes to UT basketball. I do know with 100% certainty that the Vols will play right here this afternoon on the Big 1400 against the Alabama Crimson Tide. It'll tip off at 5 o'clock. It's part of a full day of hoops here on WVWB, and we'll talk about that a little later on. But next, we're going to talk Austin Peay basketball as Colton Pouncey will join us. He's the Governor's Hoops beat writer for the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle. That conversation is coming up right after this.
Looking to catch the big game with a group of friends? Do it O'Neill style. Want to see a great live band rock the stage? Do it O'Neill style. Hungry for a great meal or just thirsty for an icy cold draft beer? Get them O'Neill style at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, a genuinely great American sports bar. They've got wall-to-wall TVs, huge selections behind the bar, and a menu that obliterates the average pub fare. Clarksville's best times take place at O'Neill's Bar and Grill, located at 1979 Madison Street in Midtown.
Treat your pets to a vacation of their own at the Animal Guest House. Whether you're looking for doggy daycare service or long-term boarding, Animal Guest House will love your most loyal companions as much as you do. They have almost 2 acres of fenced-in roaming space, offer grooming services, and proudly have absolutely 0 breed restrictions. Animal Guest House is located in Woodlawn at 1970 Chester Harris Road. Give them a call at 931-920-2719 or check them out online at animalguesthouse.com. Animalguesthouse.com.
Ever lost or misplaced your debit card? Now, before that happens, download the Card Valet mobile app. With it, you can turn your F&M debit card on and off, establish when, where, and how it is used, and much more. And best of all, it's free. From F&M Bank, member FDIC.
Cooking for large groups is exhausting, and it saps the fun out of hosting parties and events. Let your friends at the Lunchbox do the cooking next time with carry-out catering for small family gatherings up to large company outings. Whether you want barbecue and sides, hot dogs and chips, or homemade chili, the Lunchbox has the food for your next party covered. Call them today at 931-802-8227. Or better yet, go sample their extensive menu at 2124 Woodlawn Road. Fresh ingredients become delicious homemade meals at the Lunchbox, Clarksville's new favorite eatery.
Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. It's your car, it's your voice. Jackson's Body Shop, the best choice. Dents, dings, major body repair. A free loaner car, 'cause we really care. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Jackson's Body Shop downtown. Call 647-6989 or Jackson's.
WVWB, 1400 AM, Clarksville, Tennessee.
The Austin Peay Governors basketball squad is still within striking distance of that number 2 spot in the Ohio Valley Conference, which would give them a bye all the way into the semifinals of the OVC tournament. That is absolutely huge. The Govs are currently in 3rd place. They had a chance to play for 2nd on Thursday night, and they got routed on the road against Murray State. On to talk Govs hoops with us this morning, Colton Pouncey from the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle. He is the AP beat writer. Colton, how are you, man?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
We're doing awesome, and it's good to be with you. I want to get your thoughts on Thursday night's road debacle for the Governors. What do you think the main issues were for Coach Matt Figger and company in that 84-63 road loss at Murray State?
Yeah, I talked to Figger after the game, and I think his biggest issue was the lack of energy that his team played with. He said he felt that in a big rivalry game like that, he shouldn't have had to try to motivate his guys anymore. They should have just, come ready to go. That didn't really happen. You saw they went down 8-0 early in the first half, and they came back a little bit in that game. They used the 12-2 run to get back in the second half, but the wheels just kind of fell off in the latter half. They lost by 21, and Figger was not happy with that energy that his team played with in that game.
Well, as you talk about energy out on the road, and again, folks, Colton Pouncey is our guest from the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle. He's the Austin Peay Hoops beat writer. As you talk about energy, to what extent do you worry that with their youth that this Austin Peay team has almost a mental block on the road? They've only won 3 games all year long away from the Dunn Center. What's your theory on why things have gone so wrong for the Govs away from home this year?
There's a lot of new pieces on this team. Obviously, only 4 guys came back from last year's team. You got a lot of freshmen playing big minutes, a lot of guys that really aren't used to playing big minutes. So I think that mixed in with a couple other things, when you're playing, like Figger said, when you're playing the game like that, that energy should just be there, and it hasn't been there all year on the road. If this team was able to win maybe 6 games on the road at this point instead of 3, they'd be in a lot better shape in the OVC, but that hasn't happened this year.
That's how close the standings are. You're exactly right. I mean, if they could find a way to have just a little more success away from home, the story would be totally different. Colton, I want to get your assessment because you've gotten to know him well. I want to get your assessment so far on first-year head coach Matt Figger. The Govs were supposed to finish second to last in the league, and that's what the media said early in the year collectively. And right now, Coach Figger's got the Govs at number 3 in the conference, as I said, with still a shot at that number 2 spot and a double bye in the OVC tournament. Where do you think those efforts rank amongst some of the best coaching jobs in the country this season?
Based on what he had coming in, like I said, they only had 4 guys coming back. I think it's been an incredible coaching job by Figger. You can tell, he's coaching with what he has and what this roster has. I think he'll be more comfortable when he gets a little bit more talent and more of his guys in to run his system. But you could tell the defense has improved a lot. He's getting his guys to play hard most of the time. They do play with you can see that they play with passion at times. But I think the biggest thing is that Figger's defensive mindset that translates on the court for sure. He's gotten his guys to play hard when they're out there, and it's helped them. Like you said, they're picked 11th out of 12 teams in the OVC in the preseason poll, and he's got them 3rd right now. So that's impressive in its own right.
Guard play, I think, is a real issue that Coach Figger and company have had to address as they work through a lot of inconsistencies in their backcourt. Zach Galata had a team-high 17 points in Thursday night's loss, but even when he does score, he sometimes struggles defensively. Meanwhile, Trey Ivory is a decent ball handler, but not a real threat to score the ball. I think Chris Porter Bunton may be the most improved player on the squad under Coach Figure's tutelage right now. And I think Steve Harris is playing his best basketball yet at Austin Peay right now as well. Colton, what would you say is the right combination of guards for these Governors? If you were Coach Figure, who would you place your trust in at this point?
Honestly, I really do like Steve Harris. I think he's a long, athletic guard, a guy that can slash to the basket, play some solid defense, and he's really come on strong here of late. But like you said, it's kind of tough with these guys on the roster. They don't really have a true floor general or that third scoring option from the guard position behind Terry Taylor and Avery Ugba. So honestly, I think some combination of maybe Steve Harris, Chris Porter Bunton, Dayton Gum. He's a little inconsistent, but he can provide some offense for you. But you got to find a third option behind Taylor and Ugba there.
Hey, Gum, I think, is really the X factor. When he can come out and give the Governors some scoring from the perimeter, I think that really changes things and makes life a little easier on those guys around the basket. Speaking of which, let's talk about them. The Govs front line is pretty darn good. Freshman forward Terry Taylor has been phenomenal this year, and senior center Avery Ugba has joined with them to really form the backbone, I think, of this year's version of Austin Peay basketball. Ugba was a late addition, Colton, as a fifth-year transfer from Grambling. How big in your mind was that pickup for Coach Figure and company? How much would this team be lacking around the rim specifically if it weren't for Avery Ugba?
I mean, can you imagine where the team would be without both of those guys? Like, it's kind of crazy how Ugba especially just kind of lucked into their lap. He's averaging about 15 points, 8 rebounds, but it seems like it's more than that. He's contributing every single night, both offensively, on the glass, defensively. He's been one of their best players for sure. Very consistent from the inside. And Terry Taylor, I mean, I don't think anyone knew how good he was going to be this year. He's been one of the top bigs in the OVC. He's playing at a high level throughout the year as a freshman. He leads the team in both scoring and rebounding, and he's been a closer down the stretch for this team too, which that's just amazing for a true freshman.
He has been very comfortable being leaned on heavily in his freshman season, and I think that says a lot about his character. Were it not for those two guys, this Governors team, I don't think they would have won very many games at all this year. Now here they are, just a game out of second place in the conference standings, and they'll have 3 of their last 4 games, Colton, at home following today's game against Eastern Illinois. How important does that make today's game against the Panthers? The Govs will get set for a nice stretch of home games to close out the season, but they've got EIU first this afternoon. How big is that one?
I think if they can pull this one out today, that'll give them some confidence going to this final 4-game stretch down the year. Because if you look at the teams that they're playing on the final 4 games, they play Tennessee Tech, they play Jacksonville State, they play Murray. Those are 3 teams that are good and kind of where they are in the OVC. So they'll need to beat those teams. But I think getting a road win against Eastern Illinois, a team that's kind of struggled this year, that'll give some confidence heading into that final 4-game stretch. And we'll see what happens after that.
Colton, it's a young Austin Peay team. You said it's an Austin Peay team with a whole lot of new pieces. They only have 4 guys back from last season, so they've had to kind of gel and come together as a squad this year. What are your thoughts about their chances in the upcoming postseason? The OVC tournament is set for the first weekend in March. Do the Govs have a shot to make a run to the NCAAs?
It'll be tough. Belmont and Murray are kind of the top teams in the OVC right now. I think most people are expecting one of those teams to come out on top in the OVC. I think if Austin Peay wants to be that team, they do need to play with more confidence in those games, which I think playing in a bigger environment will help them. They usually play up in those games. I do think it's a year out. It's going to be tough because, Avery won't be back next year. But, I think they're a year away. Once Figure can get more of his guys in there, you get another year from Dayton Gum and Terry Taylor and some of those young guys. And this experience this year is huge for them going forward, but I think they're still like a year away at this point.
Well, as we talk about the future, Colton, I'll follow up off of that answer and ask you if you've heard any whispers about what the Governors are doing out on the recruiting trail and what might be coming in for next season.
I haven't paid too much attention to it. I've been kind of football focused with this past signing day, but I'm sure Figger has a certain mindset with these guys. I asked him what kind of player he likes, and he's like that hard-nosed defensive style guy. So I think you'll see a few more of those guys coming in, maybe a few offensive ball handlers that can help the bigs down low. So I think those are some guys that you can look for Coach Figger to target this offseason.
Well, yeah, I know that's one of the things you're going to do a good job covering moving forward. We appreciate what you do covering Austin Peay basketball, and I greatly appreciate you taking a little time out for our show this morning. You do a great job, man, and it was good talking to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Colton Pouncey is the Austin Peay basketball beat writer for the Clarksville Leaf Chronicle. He mentioned it. He also covers football as well. He does a good job covering Governor sports for our local paper, and we appreciate him carving out a little time here for our show. It's a big sports weekend. If you're a fan of the Olympic sports, the Winter Olympics are in full swing this weekend on NBC and NBC Sports Network. I know some of you will spend some time on that. If I can find a little time, maybe tomorrow afternoon, I may do so myself. I love the idea of international competition. I'm not necessarily a fan of luge or figure skating or bobsled or any of that kind of thing, but I just love the concept of international competition and the thought of the United States claiming supremacy over everybody else out there. For some reason, as a sports fan, I really enjoy that whole aspect. So that's the reason I'll be tuned in to the Winter Olympics as they take place over the course of the next couple of weeks. I'll be tuned in to lots of college basketball over those next 2 weeks as well as we head towards the end of the regular season and into conference tournament time. The Governors of Austin Peay are on the road today for an afternoon game against Eastern Illinois. That contest will tip off at 3 o'clock. The ladies play just before at 1. And the University of Tennessee basketball squad is on the road today at Alabama. We'll have that contest at 5 o'clock. I've alluded to being busy today. Our station will be busy today. We've got a lot going on when it comes to the hardwood. We'll have District 4 tournament basketball in Division 2A as we cover the Clarksville Academy Lady Cougars at 3:30 this afternoon. They'll be playing a consolation game against the University School of Nashville for third place in the 4th District. We'll have that contest at 3:30. Then we'll have the Vols against Alabama at 5. And then we'll cap it all off with a championship game tonight. The Clarksville Academy Cougars will take on Good Pasture for the 4th District crown. That game will tip off at 8. So lots of college basketball for you. Lots of high school basketball for you as well today here on the Big 1400, and we hope you'll stick with us all day long. We're sure looking forward to it, and we are honored yet again that you've chosen to kick off your sports weekend with a splash. We hope you'll do it again next week. We couldn't do it were it not for all of our fine sponsors. We hope if you appreciate what you hear on Saturday mornings here on WVWB that you don't say thank you to us. There's really no reason to pat me on the back when you see me out and about, but go into all these fine sponsors and let them know you appreciate them making sure we're on the air here each and every Saturday morning. The biggest thank you, as always, goes to our executive producer, the one and only John Michaels, making it all work behind the scenes. He is, folks, and I'm not exaggerating this, sometimes I am kind of the king of hyperbole, but John is the best in the business. So we'll say a big thank you to him, and you're the best listeners. We hope you'll be with us again next Saturday morning. Until then, I'm Justin Swallows saying so long, everybody.
Ever lost or misplaced your debit card?
Now, before that happens, download the Card Valet mobile app.
With it, you can turn your F&M debit card on and off, establish when, where, and how it is used, and much more.
And best of all, it's free from F&M Bank.
Member FDIC.
When's the last time you ate somewhere that uses real ingredients and makes everything from scratch? If it's been too long, you should head over to the